Cleaning lady recognizes millionaire CEO is her long-lost love. What he did next shocks everyone. The early morning light spilled through the towering glass doors of the corporate building like liquid gold, illuminating the polished marble floors and the cool, crisp lines of modern design. Maria stepped hesitantly into the lobby on her first day at this new job, a cleaning lady amid an environment that gleamed with opulence and understated power. Every detail around her, from the subtle scent of lemon polish to the quiet murmur of early executives, resonated with the promise of a fresh start. Yet beneath the surface of routine professionalism, Maria's heart thumped with an unspoken longing, a memory of a past that had never truly faded. As she moved silently among the immaculate corridors, her gaze lingered on every polished surface, every reflective panel, as though searching for echoes of a life long ago. And then, in the midst of this world of immaculate order and modern ambition, her eyes caught a glimpse of something, or rather someone, that made her breath hitch. There, near the far end of the spacious lobby, stood a man whose presence radiated authority and an enigmatic familiarity. Dressed in a sharply tailored suit, his dark hair was slicked back with effortless precision, and his eyes, cool, dark, and penetrating, scanned the room with an intensity that belied the quiet dignity of his bearing. In that charged moment, as if the hands of time had paused, Maria's memories surged back in a flood of vivid recollections. 15 years earlier, she had known a man whose smile had kindled hope in her heart, a young lover whose promise had been as tender as it was forbidden. Their time together had been a clandestine sanctuary, a fragile haven where dreams blossomed despite the rigid constraints imposed by a world determined to keep them apart. Now, confronted with the piercing gaze of this man, Maria felt that long-forgotten spark ignite within her, a mix of awe, disbelief, and a quiet terror of what might come. The man, unmistakably the CEO known as David Chen, paused as his eyes locked with hers. In the mirror of her wide, startled gaze, he saw not only a face but the ghost of a past that refused to be silenced. His heart pounded with a recognition that was both exhilarating and agonizing. Could it be that this gentle soul, the one who had shared secret smiles, whispered dreams, and the promise of a love that defied all odds, was standing before him in the flesh? The mere thought sent a tremor through his very being. For a suspended heartbeat, the bustling sounds of the lobby faded into a background hum. Maria's internal world erupted with a torrent of memories, the hushed confidences of youthful passion, the warmth of shared sunlight on hidden afternoons, and the bittersweet pain of a love that had been wrenched apart by the cruel edicts of a wealthy family. Is this really happening? She wondered, her thoughts churning like a restless sea. Each step she had taken, every hardship endured since that fateful separation, had led her to this singular moment. David, stepping forward with a measured grace, broke the silence that had cocooned them. His voice, unexpectedly soft yet laden with an intensity that seemed to reach deep into Maria's soul, whispered, "Maria." The single word carried with it decades of unspoken longing, regret, and a yearning for redemption that he had harbored in the secret chambers of his heart. In that moment, the polished surfaces of the lobby seemed to fade into insignificance, leaving only the raw, honest connection between two souls who had never quite let go. If this story has touched your heart so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's free, as your support helps us create more meaningful stories for you. Maria stood rooted to the spot, her eyes glistening with a mixture of disbelief and tentative hope. The taste of memories, of stolen moments under starry skies and whispered promises exchanged in the quiet corners of forgotten days, filled her senses. How could he know her name after all these years? The question echoed in her mind like a refrain in a half-remembered melody. The painful memories of his family's disapproval, those cold, relentless voices that had once dictated the course of their lives, drifted back unbidden, mingling with the sweet, fragile hope that perhaps fate had granted them a second chance. Around them, the hum of everyday corporate life resumed its rhythm. The soft clack of keyboards, the murmur of voices discussing the day's challenges. But for Maria and David, the world had narrowed to this singular, pivotal intersection of past and present. David's gaze was intense yet tender, as if he were silently pleading for forgiveness and yearning for the chance to rewrite a story that had been abruptly halted long ago. "I never stopped thinking about you," he murmured, his voice trembling with an honesty that belied the stoic mask he wore in boardrooms and public appearances. The words hung between them like delicate glass ornaments, fragile and shimmering with the promise of something extraordinary. Maria's heart pounded in her ears as she struggled to reconcile the man before her with the youthful memory she had locked away so carefully. In her mind, the corridors of time stretched back to those secret meetings and hidden smiles, a tapestry woven with threads of hope and heartbreak. Now, faced with this unexpected reunion, every fiber of her being vibrated with the possibility of reclaiming what had once been so tenderly cherished. But just as the warmth of that fragile reunion began to kindle a spark of hope, an undercurrent of unease stirred at the edges of the scene. Near the towering reception desk, almost unnoticed amid the daily flurry, a solitary figure observed the exchange with an intensity that was hard to decipher, a silent witness whose gaze hinted at secrets yet to be unraveled. Was this mysterious onlooker merely a bystander, or did their presence portend complications that neither Maria nor David could yet foresee? The question lingered in the charged silence, a subtle cliffhanger that left both hearts pounding and minds racing with uncertainty. In that moment, as the echoes of past promises intermingled with the palpable tension of the present, the world around them, once so defined by the rigid lines of corporate order, seemed to dissolve into the raw, uncharted territory of second chances. The grand lobby, with all its polished splendor, bore silent witness to the fragile reunion of two souls who had once dared to dream of a love that defied all constraints. And as the morning light deepened, casting long, dramatic shadows that danced around them, Maria and David found themselves standing on the threshold of a future that promised to be as uncertain as it was irresistible. The spark of recognition had been lit, and in that spark lay the promise of redemption, the hope of healing old wounds, and the daunting challenge of confronting the forces that had once conspired to keep them apart. With hearts laid bare and the ghost of their shared past whispering from every corner, the stage was set for a journey that would test the very limits of love, loyalty, and destiny. And as you, dear reader, wonder what fate might have in store for these two star-crossed souls, one thing remains certain: their story is only just beginning. The encounter in the lobby had left Maria's heart beating in a tumult of joy and trepidation. Now, as the day unfolded within the sleek corridors of the corporate tower, the initial spark of recognition began to reveal a labyrinth of hidden truths and long-buried secrets. Maria found herself retreating into the quiet sanctuary of a small maintenance room, where the persistent drip of a leaky pipe and the low hum of an aging refrigerator formed a modest symphony to accompany her inner tumult. Every surface around her, gleaming tiles, reflective glass, and polished metal, seemed to mirror fragments of a past life when love was both a rebellion and a refuge. Her mind raced back to clandestine moments shared with David in a time when the world had been unkind and the rules of society inflexible. How had fate spun such a tangled web that a man who once filled her days with whispered dreams now loomed as the powerful CEO of the very empire that had once threatened to tear them apart? In a sleek, sunlit office on a higher floor, David wrestled with his own avalanche of memories. Within the quiet sanctum of his private workspace, a room where every modern artifact contended with relics of a more innocent time, he retrieved a faded photograph tucked away in a leather-bound journal. The sepia image captured a moment of unbridled hope, two young hearts entwined in a secret promise, standing against the relentless march of disapproval. As his fingertips traced the delicate lines of Maria's youthful face, A storm of emotions roiled within him: guilt, longing, and a newfound determination to reclaim the love that had once defined him. But the reunion was not merely a collision of past and present. Lurking beneath the surface of both their hearts was a secret that had shaped the very course of their lives, a secret that Maria had guarded with fierce determination. In the silent hours of that morning, as she sat in her meager refuge with a worn notebook clutched in trembling hands, memories flooded back of whispered vows and midnight escapades. She recalled with both sorrow and fierce tenderness that their youthful union had been more than fleeting passion. In a desperate bid to hold on to a dream, they had secretly married, a bond sanctioned not by law but by the indelible mark it left on their souls. And hidden within the folds of that love was another secret: a child, whose very existence was a testament to their defiance against a world bent on keeping them apart. The knowledge of this hidden truth filled Maria with a bittersweet agony. Her pulse raced as she wondered how much longer she could hide the past from a present that threatened to unravel her carefully constructed life. How could she bear the weight of a secret so profound, knowing that every stolen glance and whispered memory now carried the promise of a future interrupted by betrayal and loss? Across the gleaming corridors of the corporate behemoth, David's own thoughts twisted and turned in a dizzying dance. The revelation of their secret union had always hovered on the periphery of his consciousness, a ghostly echo of a life forcefully severed by his family's cold, calculated intervention. That intervention, he now realized, was not confined to the distant echoes of his past. His engagement to a dazzling socialite, meticulously arranged to uphold the family's legacy, now emerged as another barrier, a gilded cage designed to silence the truth of his heart. Her poised smile and calculated grace, so often lauded in glittering circles, now betrayed hints of something far more sinister. Whispers in hushed corridors suggested that she had not only accepted but orchestrated the forces that kept Maria at bay, ensuring that the tender flame of their secret love never rekindled in the light of day. In a hushed conversation by the mahogany conference table, one of David's trusted aides leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, there are rumors that your fiancée may have had a hand in ensuring your past remains buried. Some say she engineered events to keep you from ever returning to those memories, perhaps to secure her own position." The words struck David like a sudden downpour on a parched summer day, unexpected, overwhelming, and laden with the promise of ruin. His heart pounded in his ears as the implications took root. Could it be that the woman to whom he was soon to be wed was also the architect of the barriers that had kept him from Maria, and, by extension, the life they once dreamed of together? As if this revelation were not enough, a shadow of foreboding began to slither into Maria's world. A discreet, anonymous note had been slipped into her locker during a brief lull in her duties. Its terse message, scrawled in an almost frantic hand, read, "Some secrets are best left buried. Beware the consequences of stirring old embers." The note's warning vibrated through her like an electric current, igniting a simmering dread that coiled in the pit of her stomach. Was it a mere idle threat, or a harbinger of a storm poised to shatter her tentative hope? In that moment, as Maria's thoughts churned with memories of clandestine nights and forbidden promises, her inner voice cried out, a plea for courage amid the encroaching darkness. "Must love always be a battlefield, dear reader?" she seemed to ask, inviting you to share in her vulnerable reckoning. Every heartbeat, every breath, now carried the dual weight of past intimacy and the looming threat of external forces determined to extinguish the fragile light of truth. David, too, felt the inexorable pull of destiny. The carefully constructed world of corporate ambition, glittering with success yet void of genuine emotion, now crumbled beneath the pressure of his internal battle. He felt a fierce urgency, a need to confront the forces that had manipulated his life for far too long. "I must set things right," he murmured to himself, his voice a mixture of resolve and trembling uncertainty. The internal conflict was a maelstrom of desire and duty, and every passing minute intensified the pulse of destiny around him. In a final, charged moment of that fraught afternoon, as golden light slanted through high windows and cast long, dramatic shadows across the polished floors, fate introduced another twist. A discreet knock on the heavy oak door of David's office paused the internal tumult for a heartbeat. The door swung open to reveal a figure whose presence sent a shiver down his spine. A messenger whose eyes held secrets and whose arrival promised yet another chapter in the unfolding saga of love, betrayal, and redemption. With hearts heavy yet alight with the possibility of reclaimed dreams, both Maria and David braced themselves for the inevitable collision of past and present, a collision that would force them to confront not only the obstacles imposed by a relentless world, but also the deeper truths that had defined their very existence. A chill that belied the warm glow of the late afternoon sun seeped through the polished corridors of the corporate headquarters as David Chen retreated into the quiet sanctuary of his private study. The space, an elegant blend of dark wood paneling and modern art, had always been his refuge from the relentless scrutiny of a world that demanded perfection. But today, as he stared out of the expansive window at a city draped in golden hues, his mind was a tempest of conflicted emotions. Every detail of the room, the smooth grain of the mahogany desk, the delicate hum of the air conditioner, the subtle aroma of expensive cologne lingering in the air, seemed to whisper echoes of memories both sweet and bitter. His eyes, dark and resolute, traced the delicate patterns of light and shadow on the wall, each flicker reminiscent of moments lost in time. The weight of the secret that had haunted him for years pressed heavily on his chest, a constant reminder of the love he had buried beneath the demands of duty and legacy. "I can't let it go on," he murmured softly, almost to himself. The reverberation of his own voice startled him for a brief moment, as if the words had broken a fragile silence that had long been maintained. The revelation of Maria's presence, coupled with the anonymous note and the hushed whispers about his fiancée's machinations, had ignited a spark of rebellion within him. It was as though every carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble under the force of an undeniable truth. David's thoughts wandered back to that fateful morning when his eyes had locked with Maria's across the grand lobby. In that suspended moment, the oppressive weight of his family's expectations and the sterile reality of his corporate life had seemed to vanish, replaced by the raw, unfiltered pulse of a past that refused to be forgotten. Her gaze had been a mirror reflecting 1,000 unspoken promises, a silent testament to a love that had once been both fierce and fragile. Now, as the minutes dwindled towards the engagement party where he was to publicly honor the life his family had meticulously designed for him, David's inner world churned with a mix of determination and dread. The party, an extravagant affair staged to celebrate a union that was nothing more than a gilded charade, was fast approaching. It was at that very event that he intended to shatter the veneer of pretense by declaring his undying love for Maria in front of an audience that had long revered him as the epitome of success. "Is it possible to rewrite one's destiny in a single moment?" he pondered, his internal monologue a turbulent blend of hope and despair. Every fiber of his being screamed for liberation from the shackles of wealth and societal expectations. His fingers trembled as they traced the rim of a crystal glass filled with amber liquid, a silent witness to his rising resolve. The familiar burn of the liquor mirrored the fierce determination that was steadily kindling within him. A soft knock at the study door interrupted his reverie. It was Eleanor, his most trusted aide, whose eyes often conveyed more than words ever could. "Sir, the final arrangements for the engagement party are in place. Is there anything you require before you step into the fray?" she inquired, her tone measured yet laced with an undercurrent of concern. David's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the vulnerability of his secret nearly betrayed him. Yet, with a steely resolve, he nodded. "Ensure everything is perfect. Tonight, I must reclaim what was once lost," even if it means tearing down the very walls that have confined me for so long?" His words, though softly spoken, carried the weight of an irrevocable promise. Eleanor's gaze flickered with a mixture of admiration and apprehension, as if she sensed that the impending confrontation would change everything. The study's clock ticked steadily, each second echoing the relentless march of destiny. David sank into a high-backed leather chair, his mind replaying the cascade of memories that had haunted him since that fateful encounter with Maria. The laughter, the whispered dreams shared in the quiet corners of youth, and the tender embrace that had once made the world seem infinitely small, all now converged into a single point of determination. Yet amid this fervor, a shadow of doubt lingered. What if the storm he was about to unleash would not bring him the solace he so desperately craved, but instead irreparable ruin? His internal turmoil deepened as he recalled the venomous whispers of his fiancée, a woman whose poised exterior concealed ambitions as dark as the midnight sky. It was said that she had not only embraced the societal norms imposed upon her, but had actively conspired to ensure that David remained tethered to a life devoid of genuine passion. The thought sent a shiver down his spine, igniting a bitter resolve. "I will not be a puppet to their schemes," he vowed silently, his heart pounding like a war drum in a quiet battlefield. Yet, amid the determination, an unexpected vulnerability surfaced. What if Maria, the keeper of his long-lost love and their secret child, was not ready to embrace the man he had become? The notion pounded in his chest with the force of a tidal wave, threatening to wash away the carefully built bridge between past and present. "Do you believe in second chances, dear reader?" he seemed to ask, his mind wrestling with the possibility that the hand of fate might be as capricious as it was kind. A sudden interruption came as the room's heavy oak door swung open once more. Standing there was a figure cloaked in ambiguity, a tall, sharply dressed man whose eyes glimmered with an unsettling intensity. He held an envelope in his hand, its surface marked by the seal of an old family crest. Without a word, the man extended the envelope towards David, and, with a slight nod, retreated into the corridor as silently as he had appeared. David's pulse quickened as he broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside, a single sheet of paper bore a message that sent a fresh jolt of apprehension through him. "The past is never truly buried. Tonight, the truth will either set you free or bind you forever." The note was signed with a name he recognized only as a ghost from a chapter of his life, best left unspoken. It was a chilling reminder that forces from his past were gathering strength, and that tonight's confrontation might ignite a chain of events he could no longer control. In that charged moment, as the light dimmed and the gathering twilight transformed the study into a theater of shadow and resolve, David Chen steeled himself for what was to come. His decision had been made. He would risk everything: his reputation, his fortune, even the fragile semblance of order that his family had so carefully maintained, in order to reclaim the love that had defined his very soul. The air around him seemed to pulse with silent promise and impending peril. Each tick of the clock, each measured beat of his heart, carried him closer to the engagement party where destiny awaited its moment of reckoning. With a final, resolute exhale, he rose from the chair. "Tonight," he declared softly to the encroaching darkness, "I choose to live for the truth." Night had draped its velvet cloak over the city, and the corporate headquarters, usually a beacon of cold efficiency, transformed into a shimmering palace of light and ambition. Twinkling chandeliers cast prismatic reflections onto polished floors, and every corner of the grand ballroom whispered of meticulously orchestrated luxury. Yet amid this splendor, an undercurrent of tension rippled like a silent alarm. Tonight was not merely a celebration, it was the crucible where truth would be laid bare. David Chen strode into the ballroom, each step measured and heavy with purpose. His tailored suit clung to him like a second skin, but beneath its crisp lines lay a turbulent storm of emotion. The memory of the envelope's chilling message still reverberated in his mind, each word igniting a spark that now blazed into a roaring flame of resolve. As he passed clusters of elegantly dressed guests, his eyes flickered with an intensity that belied the calm exterior he so carefully maintained. Inside, his thoughts roiled like dark clouds on the horizon. Tonight, I must choose between the gilded cage of expectation and the freedom of a love that has haunted me for far too long, he mused silently. The air itself seemed charged, as if the very molecules anticipated the impending collision of past and present. He could almost taste the irony. A man groomed to lead an empire now on the cusp of dismantling everything for the sake of a forbidden, resurrected romance. Across the room, whispers danced among the attendees. Many admired the opulence of the event, yet none could ignore the subtle drama simmering beneath the surface. In a secluded corner, David's fiancée, Isabel, stood in elegant repose, her gaze fixed on him with a mixture of calculated concern and icy determination. Her smile, polished to perfection, barely masked the secrets and ambitions that lurked behind those eyes. For Isabel, tonight was not simply about celebrating their union. It was a high-stakes game of power, and every move was fraught with hidden meaning. Maria, meanwhile, had been ushered to the periphery of the celebration, a quiet space near an ornate fountain where cascading water created a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. Her heart thumped erratically as she observed the scene unfolding. She clutched a small, worn photograph to her chest, an image of a time when love had been raw and unburdened by wealth and expectations. Every detail of her attire, modest yet dignified, bore testimony to the life she had lived in the shadows of corporate giants. But tonight, even the soft luminescence of the fountain could not fully dispel the darkness of memories and fears that haunted her. David's internal dialogue was a cacophony of hope and dread. What if I am too late? What if the chasm between who we were and who we have become is insurmountable? His mind raced as he rehearsed the words that would shatter the facade of this gilded charade. The clock's relentless ticking was a metronome, counting down to the moment when destiny would seize him by the throat. As the host of the evening announced a toast to the future, a future built on legacy and achievement, David's pulse quickened. He knew that behind the veneer of celebratory pleasantries lay a choice that would redefine everything. With a deep, steadying breath, he stepped onto a raised platform. The chatter hushed as eyes turned toward him, expecting a well-rehearsed speech extolling corporate triumphs and societal expectations. But the words that tumbled from his lips were anything but conventional. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice resonating with a clarity that silenced even the most persistent murmurs. "Tonight, I stand before you not as a symbol of corporate success, but as a man who has rediscovered the very essence of his soul." His gaze shifted slowly, inexorably, until it found Maria standing at the edge of the light. In that charged instant, every face in the room blurred into insignificance, and all that mattered was the echo of a long-lost promise. Isabel's eyes widened, a flash of shock mingling with indignation, but David pressed on, his words flowing with an emotional intensity that made the very air tremble. "For years, I have lived in a world dictated by duty and ambition, where love was sacrificed on the altar of legacy. But no longer can I hide behind the pretense of perfection. I cannot ignore the call of a heart that has yearned for truth amidst a sea of deception." His voice wavered, not from fear, but from the raw vulnerability of exposing the depths of his soul to a captive audience. A murmur of disbelief and awe rippled through the crowd, but the night was not yet done with its surprises. As David continued, his confession grew bolder, tinged with a resolve that bordered on defiance. "There was a time when fate separated us, when the hands of circumstance, driven by wealth and convention, tore apart what should have been eternal. Yet I stand here today, defiant in the face of that legacy. I choose to follow my heart, even if it means forfeiting everything I once held dear." In that moment, two mini cliffhangers emerged like whispered secrets in the dark. One was the mysterious murmur that began to spread among the guests, a rumor that David had been secretly amassing control over his family's company, a move that threatened to upend a carefully maintained empire. The other was the palpable tension in Isabel's eyes, as if she too held a secret, one that could unravel the fabric of the night with a single revelation. Both undercurrents hinted at more layers of betrayal and ambition waiting to be exposed. Maria's breath caught as David's words reverberated through her. The past, once locked away in the quiet recesses of her memory, surged forth like a tide reclaiming its shore. She recalled stolen afternoons under a forgiving sky, clandestine embraces beneath a canopy of stars, and the promises made in the silence of shared secrets. And now, with every syllable that David uttered, that tender, forgotten world beckoned her back, despite the dangers that lay ahead. In the hush that followed, as the final notes of David's declaration lingered in the charged atmosphere, time itself seemed to pause. The faces in the room reflected a mosaic of emotions: shock, hope, and an inescapable awareness that the course of their lives was about to be irrevocably altered. For a fleeting second, the distance between what was and what might be vanished, leaving only the raw, unadorned truth hanging in the air. David's eyes, still fixed on Maria, spoke volumes, of remorse for lost time, of defiance against the forces that had once held him captive, and of a hope that perhaps, in this moment of reckoning, destiny might offer them a second chance. As he stepped down from the platform, the murmur of a conversation resumed, carrying with it the heavy promise of transformation. Yet the lingering questions, about the secret machinations of his fiancée, about the true cost of defiance, and about the uncertain fate of their concealed child, remained like shadows at the edge of every thought. In the distance, a solitary figure observed the scene from behind a half-closed door, their eyes dark with intent and regret. The presence was a reminder that while David had chosen to bare his soul, unseen forces were already mobilizing to protect secrets that some would kill to keep hidden. The engagement party had become more than a celebration. It was the battleground for a love that defied time and societal expectation, a love that was now a beacon in the darkness for those who dared to believe in redemption. And as the night deepened and the city outside pulsed with life, every heartbeat in that glittering hall seemed to echo the timeless question: can love truly conquer the legacies of pain and betrayal? As the last strains of conversation faded from the engagement party, the glittering ballroom emptied of its dazzled guests. In the soft aftermath of his public confession, David Chen found himself alone on a secluded balcony overlooking the city's nocturnal pulse. The rhythmic hum of distant traffic and the occasional whisper of the wind were his only companions. In the cool night, every light seemed to pulse with promise and peril alike, a mirror to the inner tumult that roiled within him. David leaned against the cool stone balustrade, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the skyline melded into an endless tapestry of lights. The euphoria of his declaration had been swiftly tempered by a sudden cascade of doubts and regrets. Have I truly forsaken the life that was carved out for me? He wondered, feeling the weight of his family's legacy and the piercing chill of impending retribution. His heart pounded with both exhilaration and a lingering dread of the consequences that this newfound freedom might unleash. Inside, across the cavernous space of the mansion, Isabel was orchestrating her next move. In a private sitting room draped in shadows and guarded by austere portraits of family forebears, she stared into a mirror with eyes blazing in a mix of fury and calculated resolve. The subtle tremor in her voice, barely audible, betrayed the battle raging behind her cool facade. "You've done the unthinkable, David," she hissed into the silence as if addressing both him and herself. "How could you risk everything for a ghost from your past?" Her words, though softly spoken, crackled with the electricity of betrayal and ambition. Meanwhile, Maria had slipped away from the center of the commotion, seeking refuge in a quiet corridor far from prying eyes. The soft glow of a solitary lamp illuminated the worn tiles beneath her cautious steps. Clutching the small, treasured photograph of a time when hope had been untainted by the cruelty of circumstance, she sought solace in the intimacy of her own memories. Yet, even in solitude, the past was not content to remain dormant. A faint vibration at her side startled her. A sudden message had arrived on her modest phone. With trembling fingers, Maria unlocked the screen to reveal a terse, anonymous text. "Secrets have a way of emerging. Your child is not safe. Trust no one." The words struck her like a shard of ice, sending a shudder through her spine. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze as she weighed the chilling warning against the fragile hope that had kindled within her tonight. Could it be true? Who would dare threaten the one thing I've guarded all these years? The uncertainty gnawed at her, blending with the bittersweet rush of memories and the harsh reality that the life she'd built in secrecy was on the verge of being shattered. Back on the balcony, David's reverie was abruptly interrupted by the buzz of his phone. It was a call from Eleanor, his trusted aide whose steady voice had often served as his anchor. With a mixture of urgency and restraint, she spoke. "Sir, there's been an unusual commotion in the executive wing. It seems some members of the board have begun questioning your recent maneuvers. They're saying you've taken drastic steps with the family's assets." Her words, though measured, resonated with an undercurrent of alarm that David could not ignore. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the cool night air mingle with the heated rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Eleanor, ensure that no harm comes to those who stand by me," he replied, his tone firm yet laced with a vulnerable resolve. Every syllable carried the weight of a man caught between two worlds, the glittering promise of rebellion and the suffocating chains of expectation. In a quiet, dimly lit corridor near the administrative offices, Isabel made her way toward a heavy oak door, her footsteps silent yet determined. Her mind, however, was not solely occupied with personal vendettas. The delicate balance of power was shifting, and she knew that her next words would either fortify her position or unravel it entirely. With a deep, steadying breath, she dialed an encrypted line, whispering, "It's time to secure our future. Ensure that our interests are protected at all costs." Her directive, though curt, reverberated with the promise of ruthless measures that would spare no expense in quelling the emerging rebellion, one that now threatened not just her engagement, but the entire structure of her meticulously crafted empire. As midnight approached, the mansion became a labyrinth of intersecting fates. In a secluded meeting room, David convened an emergency gathering with his closest allies. The atmosphere was charged with an urgency that belied the opulence of their surroundings. A hush fell as he laid bare the truth of his recent actions and the precarious tightrope he now walked. "I have chosen a path that may cost me everything," he confessed, his voice echoing against the cool marble walls. "But love, true, unyielding love, is worth every risk." His gaze, steady yet haunted, swept across the assembled faces, each reflecting a mix of admiration, concern, and trepidation. In that moment, the mansion's secrets seemed to swirl around them like unseen specters, each one a reminder that every choice, no matter how noble, carried with it a price. David's allies exchanged glances, each silently acknowledging the fragile equilibrium between personal conviction and the relentless pursuit of power. The whispered conversations and furtive nods hinted at a storm gathering on the horizon, a storm that promised to reshape their world in ways no one could yet fathom. Across town, in the quiet anonymity of a modest apartment, Maria sat alone in a dimly lit room, the anonymous message still burning in her thoughts. The photo in her hand was more than just a memento. It was a lifeline to a past that had once been filled with the possibility of joy and connection. Her mind raced with questions. Who sent this message? How much do they know? And, most crucially, what danger now lurks for the child I've hidden away so carefully? As she traced the edges of the photograph with gentle, desperate fingers, A single tear escaped down her cheek, shimmering like a tiny prism in the low light. In the silence of that moment, Maria's inner monologue broke through the quiet, a raw, unfiltered plea to the unseen forces that governed her destiny. "Must I always pay the price for loving too fiercely?" she wondered, her voice barely audible yet charged with a desperate longing for safety and understanding. The lingering question hung in the air, a beacon of uncertainty that promised to upend everything she had fought so hard to protect. And as the night deepened, the mansion and the modest apartment, so worlds apart, continued their silent dance of revelations and betrayals. The stakes had never been higher, and the threads of fate were tightening around every secret and every promise. For David, Isabel, Maria, and those shadowed figures entwined in their saga, the coming hours would be a crucible, a final test of loyalty, love, and the courage to face an uncertain future. In that charged atmosphere, one truth was clear. The past, with all its hidden scars and tender memories, was not something that could be buried forever. And as the echoes of that truth reverberated through the night, a single, foreboding thought emerged, a thought that would leave both hearts trembling and minds racing with the knowledge that the next chapter was poised to shatter everything they thought they knew. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting long, trembling shadows across the city that bore silent witness to the night's tumultuous events. In the quiet moments before sunrise, the corridors of the corporate mansion seemed to hold their breath, as if the secrets of the past and the promises of a new future were converging into one final, transformative moment. David Chen, still bearing the weight of his public confession and the repercussions that had rippled through his world, walked briskly down a marble hallway. His mind churned with the echoes of the previous night, whispers of rebellion, the thunder of whispered threats, and the echo of his own vow to embrace truth above all else. Each step he took was measured, yet determined. The confidence that had been rekindled within him now radiated like a beacon amid the lingering gloom of doubt. In his private study, now bathed in the gentle glow of morning, David paused before a large, ornate mirror. His eyes, dark with resolve yet softened by vulnerability, met his reflection. A man transformed by the choice to abandon the gilded chains of expectation in pursuit of an authentic life. "I have risked everything for love," he murmured softly, the words a benediction to both his past self and the uncertain future that beckoned. His internal monologue was a tempest of both fear and hope. Can love truly defy the cruelty of fate and the relentless might of legacy? Yet, with each passing moment, he felt that the answer was becoming increasingly clear. Meanwhile, far from the opulent halls of the mansion, Maria stood on the threshold of a modest yet warmly lit apartment. The harsh glare of artificial light had given way to the soft caress of early morning, and in the quiet solitude of her own space, she allowed herself to finally breathe. The anonymous message that had once ignited dread now served as a catalyst for a hard-won clarity. "I have hidden my truth for so long, my secret child, the love we once shared, the promise of a life unburdened by society's chains. But no more." Her trembling fingers brushed against the faded photograph she carried, a memento of a time when hope was as boundless as the skies above, and her eyes glistened with the determination to protect the fragile light of her new beginnings. Back at the mansion, the tension that had shrouded the previous night was gradually giving way to an atmosphere of reluctant acceptance among the board members and key players of the corporate empire. David had convened an urgent meeting, one that bore the weight of impending transformation. In the conference room, the soft rustling of papers and the measured tapping of shoes on polished floors underscored a moment of collective reckoning. David's voice, resonant and unyielding, filled the room as he addressed his allies. "Tonight, we stand at the crossroads of legacy and love. I have taken a stand not merely for myself, but for every soul that has been stifled by the tyranny of expectation. I am willing to sacrifice the familiar for the promise of a future where truth triumphs." His words, charged with raw emotion, brought forth nods of understanding and quiet murmurs of support. Yet not all hearts were ready to embrace this revolution of sentiment. In a quiet corner of the room, Isabel's gaze was fixed on the door through which David had just emerged. Her eyes, once alight with ambition and cold calculation, now flickered with the dawning realization that the empire she had so meticulously guarded was slipping away. "You have always been too idealistic," she whispered to herself, her voice betraying both regret and hardened resolve. The ripple of her inner turmoil was palpable. Her next move would determine whether she would join in this tide of transformation or cling to the remnants of a crumbling world built on deceit. As the morning unfolded, the mansion became a microcosm of change. David's aides, once complicit in a system of rigid expectations, now rallied behind him as he set in motion plans to restructure the corporate hierarchy in favor of transparency and compassion. The echo of his earlier proclamation resonated in the polished hallways, promising that the era of cold ambition was drawing to a close. And though whispers of dissent lingered, they were steadily overwhelmed by the sheer force of his conviction. In the midst of this shifting landscape, Maria's phone buzzed once more, a message that carried both relief and urgency. It was from an old friend, one who had long guarded the secret of her child and who now confirmed that the threat had been neutralized. "The danger has passed," the text read simply, yet the reassurance it brought was profound. With a cautious smile, Maria allowed herself to believe that the shadows of the past were finally receding, making way for the tender glow of a new dawn. The narrative converged in a final, symbolic act. In the grand foyer of the mansion, under the soft light of a newly kindled fire, David and Maria found themselves once again face to face, this time not as fragments of a broken past, but as whole individuals reborn in the crucible of truth. Their eyes met with an intensity that spoke of shared sorrow, unyielding passion, and the hard-won knowledge that the scars of yesteryear could serve as the foundation for an even stronger tomorrow. David stepped forward, his voice a gentle yet resolute caress. "Maria," he said, the name imbued with all the meaning of lost years and newfound hope, "I have chosen to break free of the chains that once bound me. I choose you, our love, our truth, and the promise of a life we can build together." His words, echoing softly against the marble and glass around them, were met with a silent, trembling nod from Maria, a gesture that encapsulated the entirety of their shared journey. In that luminous moment, the mansion seemed to exhale a long-held breath, as if the very walls were releasing decades of pent-up expectation and sorrow. The forces that had once conspired to keep them apart, wealth, societal pressure, and the machinations of deceit, dissipated like mist before the rising sun. Their union, once forbidden and shrouded in secrecy, now stood as a testament to the unyielding power of truth and the redemptive nature of love. Outside, the city awoke to a new day, its streets bathed in the gentle radiance of morning light. For David and Maria, the future was no longer a battleground of hidden scars and whispered betrayals, but a blank canvas upon which they would paint a story defined by resilience, passion, and the courage to defy fate. The lingering questions about the true cost of defiance and the shadows of their past were gradually transformed into promises of a future where every heartbeat echoed the triumph of the human spirit. And as the dawn unfurled its delicate hues across the sky, a quiet certainty settled over them, that in choosing love over legacy, they had not only rewritten their own destiny, but had ignited a spark that might one day transform the world around them. With hands intertwined and hearts alight with the promise of tomorrow, they stepped forward into the radiant unknown, leaving behind the ruins of a life dictated by expectations, and embracing the boundless possibility of a truth that, at long last, set them free. In life, just like in this story, love doesn't always follow the path society lays out for us. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is choosing to listen to your heart, even when the world tells you it's wrong. Remember, true love isn't about the roles we play or the masks we wear. It's about having the strength to be authentically ourselves, no matter the cost. So, to all of you watching, your past doesn't have to define your future. Your social status doesn't have to limit your dreams, and it's never too late for a second chance at love. Share this video if you believe in the power of love to break down walls and bridge any divide. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of family, redemption, and the triumph of love over pride. Remember, it's never too late to change your story.